I'm your host, John Myers, live from Stillwater, Oklahoma. We have got a great show tonight. It's John Myers. Hey, everybody. Gotta have my notes. It's John Myers from the Kicker UnMasked Studios. Gotta have my notes. Alternator. Hey, everybody. We have fun. Hey, everybody. Hit like and subscribe. Right here, right now. It's John Myers. We like to give stuff away. Alternator. Post some more pictures. We got to thank Steve and Becky live from Stillwater, Oklahoma. Don't forget Texas Roadhouse right here, right now. Hey, everybody. Don't forget right here, right now. We have got a great show tonight. Hey, everybody. Had a great dinner tonight. It's John Myers. Checking. Right here, right now. Had a great dinner tonight. So, hey, everybody. So, housekeeping. Had a great dinner tonight. So, alternator. Housekeeping. Housekeeping. So, Tuesday night. Housekeeping. From the Kicker UnMasked Studios. Housekeeping. Right here, right now. Hey, everybody. So, it's John Myers. Hey, everybody. It's John Myers from the Kicker UnMasked Studios. Hey, everybody. From the Kicker UnMasked Studios. It's John Myers. Right here, right now. We have got a great show tonight. Hey, everybody. We have got a great show tonight. It's John Myers. Hey, everybody. Right here. Hey, everybody, we're back, and I'm back. I'm your host, John Myers, for Kicker UnMasked Weekly, right here live from Stillwater, Oklahoma. We had a great show last week, but we're not going to talk about that because we want to dive into this week. Got the usual crew. We got Tim behind the camera. We got Bill Frog. We got Ernie in the back. And, of course, we got JW, man in the controls. So what a great time. Thank you, Andy, for filling in the time slot last week. So, let's go talk about some fun with sealed enclosures, and we will talk to you right after this.
It's been a long road since the original Kicker christened that first pickup truck. It kicked off a car audio renaissance, and upgrading your music in a vehicle was a requirement. America's music machines became living loud over your passion, your emotion, your existence. Outdoors or on the open road, your sound is Kicker.
Well, thanks for tuning in. And as always, we're going to thank Steve and Becky for allowing us to do this and for a great dinner. And I bet you can guess what we had tonight. Yep, you probably figured it out. Anyway, don't forget to sign up for the giveaways. If you guys are new to the show, we give away something every single time we're on the air. And Ernie, if you want to go ahead and pull up the laptop, we're going to go down to kicker.com/umweekly. And that's where you're going to register for tonight's prizes, which are going to be, for the third prize winner, you're going to get the gray t-shirt, the Kicker koozie, and you're going to get the EB400 wireless earbuds. Second place is going to get the Kicker t-shirt, the Kicker koozie, and the Tabor headphones. And, of course, the grand prize winner for tonight, as always, will receive, well, at least it's been almost always, It's going to receive the kicker koozie, the t-shirt, and the Cush NCs. Probably my favorite headphones of all time. So what a great giveaway. And once again, if you guys haven't won, keep tuning in every Tuesday night, 7:30 right here on the Kicker YouTube and Facebook channel. And don't forget to hit that like and subscribe button. We want to make sure you like what we're doing. And if you guys have any suggestions for future shows, for guests or topics, please reach out to us and let us know. We want to make this as entertaining as possible. And do not forget to register for the Gately giveaway. What a great graphic we have there. And I tell you what, I would really be honored to have one of those enclosures myself. Hint, hint, nudge, nudge, Bobby. Those things are awesome. I just absolutely love, a really well done acrylic enclosure where you can really see what's going on. And, it's just art, guys. So make sure you register for that. It is going to be a fantastic giveaway and great. So let's jump right into this. Let's start talking enclosures. Now, obviously, we've talked, in the past, all different types of enclosures, and we're going to break it down in detail. We're going to go over sealed enclosures. Now, sealed enclosures basically is called an acoustic suspension. That's where you have air pressure, that's the acoustic, being the spring or suspension to control the movement of the speaker. So acoustic suspension speakers are pretty easy to build. I mean, always want to follow the specifications on your manufacturer's, website or owner's manual to make sure you build it correctly. But sealed boxes are pretty forgiving. You can build them up to 20% larger or smaller, and there's advantages to go either way. If you're looking for a tighter, harder hitting bass, build the enclosure on the smaller side. If you want really smooth, deep, natural sounding bass, you want to go to the larger side. Obviously, when you go larger, you don't have quite as stiff a spring on it, so you might be limited in power handling by going too large. And in fact, if you really go too large in a sealed enclosure, it becomes an infinite baffle where the enclosure has no effect on the woofer and the frequency response. So you got to be really careful there that you don't build them absolutely too large. If you do that, you're going to have a subsonic filter to protect them from the low frequencies. But as always, when you're building enclosures, it's really, a good idea to make sure you follow proper enclosure building techniques. There's a lot of great videos. Mark from Car Audio Fabrication is always showing some great videos, and there's a lot of you guys out there doing some really cool stuff. So make sure you tune into what those guys are doing and watch some videos, and watch several videos just to get an idea of what everyone's doing and kind of use your own judgment. But when you build large enclosures with large flat panels, you want to make sure you use some type of bracing in the enclosure. Any amount that the enclosure vibrates is going to change the sound. Therefore, it's not going to sound as good. So very stiff, strong enclosures. Make them as airtight as possible. I mean, there's no such thing as a 100% sealed enclosure, but you can get them 99.9% of the way sealed. And when you do that, when you got a good sealed enclosure, you won't have to listen to air leaks, because those can be really annoying, because you're going to build up some pretty good pressure in a sealed enclosure. But the whole thing we want to start talking about is, the different, theories on building a dual woofer chamber box. So I've got a couple examples sitting over next to me, and we got some cool test equipment. We're actually going to run this through the paces here. And if you guys have any questions or have any suggestions as we do this, please jump right in there in the chat box and reach out to the guys. And if it's something really exciting or something we really need to cover, the guys will interrupt me and pull it up here. But this is going to be a lot of fun. I think some of this is going to be surprising to a lot of you people. And I've really wanted to do this show for a long time. Actually longer than the show's been around. So for many, many years, I've wanted to be able to do demonstrations to do exactly what we're going to do today. A lot of you guys might learn something. Maybe you guys know everything there is to know. I don't know. We're going to find out. I had my theories and things I'd talked about, for many years, and I, wanted to put them to the test. So we're going to see what's going to happen when we do some different sealed boxes and different arrangements. And we're going to talk frequency response. We're going to talk about output and the differences. So we start talking about the gear. Obviously, we're going to use the laptop, which is here in front of me. That's going to be our RTA. It's going to be using True RTA, which is a program you can get for free. I've got the upgraded version, the $99 version. Yeah, only 99 bucks. It's a heck of a good software. It will allow you to do an oscilloscope with dual trace. You can actually monitor input and output voltage. You can monitor both channels if you want to look for time alignment. It's great for that. I mean, this is not a True RTA, advertisement, but just so you guys know, you can also select between 1 octave, 3rd octave, 12th octave, and 24th octave. So if you really want to get down to the weeds, and you can adjust the frequency range, which is specifically why I picked this, because we're just talking woofers tonight. We're not talking, 20 to 20K. We're going to set this thing up probably from 20 to 200, and we can do that with the software. Now, to get signal into the laptop, so we can actually use that program. We've got a little piece of equipment right up here. I'm not sure if Tim can sneak over and point to this. This is the Focusrite, the Scarlett audio piece. And the Focusrite will allow us to take the input from a microphone, and it's going to send an output via USB to the laptop, and that's going to give me signal into the laptop. Now, if you guys don't know what the box looks like, this is what the Scarlett piece looks like. Oops, sorry, Tim. I'm playing with this camera angle. This is the piece. It's pretty affordable. I think it's just under $100 for this piece, and they do make a 2-channel version, which if you're going to do the dual trace oscilloscope or do 2 channels, you do need the 2-channel version. This is a great little piece to have. It'll allow us to take a microphone input directly into the laptop. Why are we not using the little RTA meter that we build with the microphone jack? The reason being, this laptop has an automatically puts a roll off on the bass response from about 100 hertz and down. It rolls off at 12 dB per octave. So it's not very accurate. So that's why I'm not using the microphone input on the laptop. That's why I had to go in through the USB so I get an uninterrupted signal. So something else we've got, we're going to be using the audio control RTA. That's going to be measuring SPL. So we're going to talk about the differences in outputs when we're doing the different enclosures with obviously, 1 or 2 woofers. And other than that, we got the 2 microphones set up. Now, we want to make a disclaimer. What we're doing today is we're not talking about the frequency response. We're not really going into deep in detail on that. We're not comparing this woofer to that woofer. All we're really doing is we're keeping all the parameters the same so that when we do a test, it's going to be comparable. So we're not looking at the overall frequency response. I mean, when you see the boxes, they're going to roll off pretty good on the low bass region. We've got no transfer function from a vehicle here, so it really is almost open air. So don't judge the speakers by their frequency response because it's not in the car. And like I say, we don't care what the frequency response is between the 2 woofers we're going to use up here. That's not the point. The point is what they're going to do with 1 or 2 woofers in an enclosure, and we're going to talk about the placement of sealed enclosures as we get going. So, fun. So why don't we talk about signal? Ernie, why don't you go ahead and pull up my laptop again, if you don't mind. So if you guys are wondering where to get test tones from, just so you guys know, if you go to kicker.com, and let's actually go back to the beginning here. So go up back to the main page. You're going to go up here to support and then click down here on test tones, and it's going to bring up the test tones for all the specific pieces of equipment that you need test tones for. It's got the Keylock Smart Line Output Converter test tones. It's got the Key 500 test tones, and we've got some sweeps and just paint noise. So here again, it's a great place to get some good usable information that you can use for testing things. And what I'm going to actually do is I'm going to use my phone here because there's another good app. It's called Kicker U. If you get onto the Kicker U app, you've got all kinds of good information. I mean, you've got box designing software, sealed, ported. I think there's bandpass in here as well. You've got power wire calculators. You've got the frequency and tone generator, which I have here. Just really a whole bunch of good information on that. And that app, I think, is about $3.99 or $4 for the full unlocked version. So that's pretty awesome, too. So we're going to be using the phone. We're going to be using both the sine wave generator, and we're going to be using paint noise right from my phone. And we always talk about, you don't recommend you Bluetooth, because it just doesn't have the best frequency response. We don't care about the frequency response for this. We're not looking for a flat 20 to 20 response. We just want to show you the various outputs of the different configurations. So it's going to be an apples to apples comparison. And once again, the Bluetooth isn't going to have a whole lot of effect in the low frequencies. It really has a lot more effect at high frequencies, and we're only going to show you up to 200 hertz because they are woofers, guys. That's all they're going to do is bass response. So I'm going to switch my phone over here to paint noise. We can go ahead and go back. I think, we're going to go back to the laptop, Ernie, if you don't mind. So if you guys pull it up here, this is going to be true RTA. So if you notice in the upper left corner of true RTA, you've got basically the oscilloscope function, you've got the RTA function, you've got the start and stop for the measurements, you've got left in, left minus right, left plus right. I've got a lot of really interesting functions, and over here is where we can actually set the frequency ranges. So as you can see, we've got the high frequency limit at 100 hertz, the low frequency limit at 20 hertz, and I've got it set up at 24th octave. So I'm going to go ahead and start some paint noise playing, and hopefully this won't be too annoying. And if you guys go ahead and watch the graph as we go up here and hit go. And I may start and stop this from time to time just to make sure my voice doesn't interfere with the sound. But if you notice, that's from 20 to 100 hertz. That's a 24th octave, and as we break this down to 12th octave, you see we get less resolution, and clear down to 1 octave. I mean, you just really can't see a lot, which is another reason why I've chosen to use the 24th octave setting on True RTA. It really does have a lot of nice ranges, and I can also adjust the upper and lower cutoffs in dB output as well. So what we're playing right now, over here on my right, if you'll switch over the camera on the right down here next to me, we have two comp 12-inch woofers, comp C 12-inch woofers. They are in 1.5 cubic foot sealed apiece. So pretty common enclosure. But if you notice by the lines in the center, that box does have a divider down the center. So the first thing we're going to do is I'm going to go ahead and stop talking for a minute. I'm going to let the graph level itself out, and I'm going to freeze the graph, and we're going to store this for a comparison later. And that's the nice thing about the True RTA. Yep. Nope, Ernie caught it right there. We were playing earlier and need to make sure the other sub's hooked in because it's going to get a whole lot louder. Thanks, Ernie. That's what happens when you go live. All right, so I'm going to shut up for just a second. We're going to watch the RTA, and if you notice the two woofers in the box. All right, so what we've done is I've stored that in the first preset memory on the EQ. And Ernie, if you could show them, or Tim, show them what the RTA is reading right now. Yeah, we're going to wear Tim out here with the camera here, guys. So it looks like, now that I can read it, since I can see the camera, we got about 94 to 95 dB in output. Nice little rumble. So now what I'm going to do, guys, is I'm going to go over here and I'm going to disconnect one of these woofers, and these are in their own separate sealed chambers. So go ahead and cut back to the RTA, Ernie, if you wouldn't mind. So now you can see the frequency response in the RTA. We've disconnected one of the woofers, and I'm going to shut up again and let this thing stabilize. I'm going to store that in 2. Now, if you notice from looking at the graphs, they look pretty similar. Obviously, the second graph is down. Each one of these divisions is 5 dB. And let's see the RTA, or the decibel meter. So we're down to 89 to 90 dB, which is exactly what we would expect. We disconnected one of the woofers. Well, that's half the cone area, and the amplifier is not playing it in parallel, so it's going to be half the voltage, half the wattage, essentially. So that would be about a 6 dB decrease in output by disconnecting one woofer. That's what's going to happen if you've got a woofer that quits playing. But keep in mind that they're both in their own individual sealed chambers, and that's why the frequency response looks almost identical. It's just not as much of output. So here again, this is by having the divider in the enclosure. So if we remember, and I'm not touching any of these settings, as far as the pink noise volume, we're going to leave it exactly the same. But what I'm going to do now is we're going to go hook up the enclosure that has no divider. So bear with me for a moment, guys. I'm just going to pause this for a second so we don't burn up the amplifier if we happen to short the wires together. This is where I need a helper. That's not my better side, guys. So, I don't know if you guys paid much attention to this, but if you notice the tape marks, this box is a little bit smaller than the other box. The outer dimensions, the height and the Depth are exactly the same as the other box, but this box is 3/4 of an inch narrower. Why is that? Because we don't have a divider down the middle. So I've made sure the boxes are exactly the same volume. Make sure we have both woofers connected this time. And don't forget, guys, the contest is going to end at 8 o'clock tonight, so you got about 12 minutes. So let's turn on the pink noise again. Start the RTA. Restore that one. Quick question, can you guys see the output level? 95 dB. So if you guys remember, with the divider in place, it was 95 dB. Almost no difference in output. So the box does not play louder with the divider. And that's one of the things I've heard for many years. You take the divider out of the box, it plays louder. Well, physics should tell you that it's probably not going to do that because you're not increasing the power and you're not increasing the cone area. So if the woofers were exactly matched, you should have exactly the same frequency response, which is pretty much what we have here by the RTA. The other thing I want to point out is that, that's assuming, that's okay to do, assuming that both woofers are exactly the same. Now, if you guys happen to work in a warranty department in an audio company, like ours, you'll notice a lot of times we get woofers sent back, dual woofer enclosures, and only one woofer is bad. Well, if those woofers were exactly the same and they're running off a mono amplifier, they should both be perfect or they should both be blown up. So as far as the speakers being exactly the same, we try to make them exactly the same, but there's always subtle little differences. But overall, it's not going to affect the total output and sound just between the differences in the two woofers. There's not that much of a difference that it's really going to make a whole lot of difference as far as sound. So let's go back over to the common chamber box right now, and let's disconnect one of the woofers. We'll disconnect the one on, I believe that's your left. Go ahead and show the output meter real quick, Ern. So pretty close to the same as I talk and make it louder. But it's a little bit louder. Now, why is that? I disconnected one woofer, it's just a little bit louder. Let's go back and look at the frequency response to see what it actually looks like, because remember that meter's doing an average of all frequencies. So let's hit go on the meter here. So, what I'm going to do now, let's go back and look at these two last graphs. If you can blow that up, Ernie. I don't think they need to see me for this part. I want to talk more about the graphs. So, the decibel meter did show about a dB louder, but once again, that's averaging overall. Here are the two different outputs. Now, the yellow graph in the back is with both woofers playing. The graph on the front is with one woofer playing. Now, if you remember, let's go back and pull these two up. That was the common, or the separate chamber box that had a separate chamber for each of the woofers. Almost identical frequency response without the divider in place. Quite a big difference in frequency response. I'm going to go back over and connect it and disconnect it a couple of times and let you actually hear, if you got headphones on or a good set of computer speakers, what the difference is in sound quality. So right now we've got one woofer playing, second, one playing, both playing. So what's happening is that second woofer is becoming a little bit of a passive radiator. So it's going to give you a little bit of a bump. And in fact, if we look at the graph right here, and I click on that, it looks at about 46 hertz. We're getting a little bit of bump in output for that one speaker being used as a passive radiator. What's really interesting is if I turn off the pink noise and I turn on just a sine wave, and I'm going to have to turn this down. We're done with the actual output measurement comparisons, because when we start playing a sine wave, it gets a little bit louder. And we can do the same thing we did, with the single woofer connecting and unconnecting as far as measuring the dB on the output. It's going to be the same 5 dB difference. Now you might be asking, why 5 dB, not 6 dB? Well, we got a couple of things that could be happening. The amplifier may not be completely doubling its power when you get up, to a 2 ohm versus a 4 ohm. The other issue we might be having, which is why it's a little, not quite, an absolute drop in 6 dB, is you got 2 woofers on one baffle. We talk about mutual coupling. When the woofers are together, you're going to get a lot more mutual coupling in the output. There isn't, a dead spot in between the woofers. Hey, it's another, reason for square woofers. You put those together, multiple square woofers on a panel, and that whole panel pretty much radiates noise without any voids in the center in between the speakers. So I'm going to attempt to do this here. I'm going to let that play, and we're playing at 39 hertz, just so you guys know. In fact, I could go ahead and turn the RTA on if you guys want to see what we got here. So we're pretty much centered at 39 hertz, but what I'm going to do now is I'm going to roll this box forward, and hopefully the camera's going to show this. I'm going to show you what happens to the cone movement on the woofer that I'm going to disconnect. Ernie, you can take the RTA off the screen. So if you notice, both woofers connected, they're both moving about the same amount. So let's disconnect the woofer, which is on my right, would be the one on your left, and look at the differences in the cone travel. So what's going on here? Well, obviously, this woofer is playing. This one is moving more, but it's not playing. It's actually, basically, it's along for the ride. It's being affected by the other woofer, similar to what a passive radiator does. But if you notice how much more travel this woofer has than the other woofer, you can actually tear this speaker apart, even if it just becomes disconnected. The other woofer at certain frequencies, it's going to unload like a ported box does, and it can actually tear the speaker apart mechanically. Not only that, when we disconnect the speakers, it's going to sound different. You're going to lose output. Therefore, you're going to try to turn up the speaker that is playing louder, and you're possibly going to damage that speaker. So, kind of fun. I wanted to do this for quite a while. With the differences between, a common chamber and 2 separate chambers for each of the woofers. So I'm curious if we got any comments up there that anybody wants to bring up or mention. Hopefully the guys have stored a couple, and I hope you guys had some fun with that. And we're not done yet. We got more to do. Got about 4 more minutes in the contest for you guys to get registered. So, all right, why is there bass roll-off? That's from SJC, and as always, I want to thank the, Andy and 25 Hertz to Life and David Brown and Rodney for joining and watching us tonight and having some fun. But why is there bass roll-off? As we mentioned, this is pretty much infinite baffle. It's free air. You don't get the transfer function of a vehicle because it's not a confined area. So the bass is allowed really to escape, and it doesn't, really amplify and build a lot of pressure because it's allowed to escape. So if we put this in a vehicle, that's something else, we might do on another show, is take, one of these boxes and measure it outside the vehicle and then put the exact same box in a vehicle and measure its output. It does make a difference where you put your woofer in the vehicle. It makes a difference, how far forward, how far backward. That is going to change what we call the standing waves in the vehicle. And the reason for that is a 40 hertz note is about 28 feet long. So one wavelength at 40 hertz is 28 feet. Well, that's longer than any car out there. It's not going to be able to complete itself. Therefore, you're going to have some cancellation. So it does make a difference with any enclosure, sealed, vented, bandpass, where you put it in the vehicle. And what I always suggest, if at all possible, you want the woofer as far away from you as possible. That allows that time, allows time for the wavelength to complete itself before it bounces back and cancels. That's why in a lot of the smaller pickups out there, they got just a standard cab. It's really hard to get really deep bass because it basically gets canceled as it bounces throughout the vehicle. But you do have the advantage. You got a smaller area to compress, so therefore you get a little bit of a help there on the really low frequency response. So great question, why we've got bass roll off when we do that. So the standing waves are really important, but we're going to talk about just speaker placement directions and here in just a second when we go back to the sealed enclosures. I got another question. Which software was that again? That is called True RTA. Like I say, there is a free version. There's actually, I think, 2 different paid versions. What I have on my laptop is their full-blown, whiz-bang, high-jammy version that's $99. But that's where, if we go back into the control, we can set the upper cutoff, the lower cutoff in dB, the frequency limit. In fact, we can run this all the way up to 50K. I can't hear to 50K. I'm not sure if I can even hear 15K. But down here, it actually will go down to 10 hertz, and then as high as you want. So you can change the parameters of the graph to whatever you're trying to measure, and you can change the resolution of the graph. And the other thing that's kind of interesting, you can do this, is it'll tell you how many cycles it will average. So if I set this to average of 1, it's going to be a lot quicker to change, and it's going to be a little harder to see. So the longer you draw it out, the more time it takes to get a smoothed out, or not smoothed out, but an accurate response, because it's got to average everything out. So it's a really neat program to have. And then of course, as I mentioned before, it does have the oscilloscope function. If you want to see clipping, you want to see time alignment, where you can actually measure the left and right channel at the same time. You can actually see where those waveforms are moving differently. And you can see the difference between input and output voltage. You can even go in and set it so you can see if there's input or output clipping at the same time. So it's a great little program to have. It's not overly expensive too. If you do a lot of this, it's a pretty decent investment. The Focusrite piece to get the signal in the laptop, that was about $100. And then I'm just using a Date microphone from Parts Express. I think the part number is 7802. It's a very common microphone. It works great. And the cool thing about Dayton, if you're really, looking for accurate frequency response, they do give you a calibration file with the microphone that actually will basically, it's like an RTA curve for the microphone. So they'll run what they know is absolute flat pink noise into it, measure what the microphone is measuring, and this program actually has a spot where you can import that calibration file so you can see, hyper accurate frequency response curves, a lot more accurate than you can hear with your ear. So great question. Like I say, not a whole lot of money, and there's all together with the Focusrite, the microphone, and the program, it's $300. That's the price of, one halfway decent or not even that great enclosure, but it really will make a difference in your measurements having good equipment to measure by. Will sealed go below 40 hertz? Yeah, that'll go below 40 hertz. Maybe not so much in this room, but yep, sealed goes below 40. In fact, what's really interesting talking about that is a sealed box is going to play lower and smoother than a vented box. Sealed boxes roll off at 12 dB per octave on the low end. Vented boxes or ported boxes roll off at 24. So you're actually going to get better low frequency response from a properly built sealed box than you do a poorly or even a smaller ported box. So yes, it will play below 40 hertz. What is the distance of the microphone to the subwoofer? It's about 6 or 7 feet. Now, normally when you're testing for sensitivity on speakers, and we're not talking about efficiency. Efficiency is power in versus power out, and it's measured in percentage. Sensitivity is where they tell you how loud a speaker will be with 1 watt at 1 meter, which is a little bit over 3 feet. So the reason I haven't set the microphone exactly 3 feet away is we don't care what the actual number is. All we're looking for is a absolute fair comparison. So long as you don't move the microphone. Like I said, most companies plan on giving you an accurate measurement. They'll measure it at 1 watt, 1 meter. There was a company years ago who's no longer in car audio. They used to give the sensitivity of their speakers at 1 watt, half a meter. So they looked like they were a lot louder. Now, what does that mean for you guys? The higher the sensitivity on a speaker, the less power it requires to play the same volume. So a woofer that plays 85 hertz with 1 watt at 1 meter versus a woofer that plays 88 dB at 1 watt, 1 meter, the one at 88 dB sensitivity is actually going to be louder with the same amplifier. So that's where sensitivity is really important. That's why we start talking about your PA style speakers, some of those tweeters out there, 108, 110 dB sensitivity with 1 watt, 1 meter. And I don't know about anybody else, but that is loud. And I just looked up the clock above the monitor up here. It is closed for the contest, so stick around when we get done with all this. We're going to tell you who wins the prizes for tonight. So next question up here from SJC Audio Guy, the SFFV. At Kicker, is the quad box dual or quad chambered? That's an interesting question. That is actually a mono chamber enclosure. So it is one continuous chamber. Now, why did we do that? The port is centrally located within the woofers. So here again, assuming the woofers are exactly the same, there's going to be at least cancellation as possible. The problem is for us to manufacture that box with 4 separate vented chambers, it would be very, very costly and very, very hard to build. So we kind of weigh, the pros and cons, and you'll see a lot of our older dual boxes had the vent on the side of the enclosure, but in the inside of the enclosure, the actual opening for the vent was pretty close to in between the 2 woofers, so it loads them correctly. And if you guys want, if you're really interested, maybe we'll do another show and we'll do vented enclosures the same way. We'll talk about, common chamber vented enclosures, which, as you probably guessed, I recommend a separate chamber for each woofer in a sealed enclosure, but even more so in vented enclosures. And it gets really important as far as the loading on the backside of the woofer at different frequencies, how much each of those speakers are traveling. So even if the speakers are matched perfectly 100%, depending on how the box is built, it can actually change the cone travel of each one, and they are going to affect each other and interact with each other. So we got one more question or 2 more up here. Phil at Mobile Sound says, what products have you guys seen used to create a seal, whether in the box seams or around the drivers? There's a lot of different things you can use. In the early days, silicone was really popular. Don't recommend silicone, because if you ever want to pull that speaker out of the box for any reason, it's probably not going to come out very easily. Plumber's putty is actually fairly popular. It's a really, flexible putty, but it's pretty thick. It doesn't, it won't blow out from air pressure, so that can be used. Just good foam gaskets. Lowe's sells some great foam gaskets, all different thicknesses. They've got open cell foam. In fact, some of the closed cell foam, which is the really stiff foam, like you see in some of the weather seals around the cars, that's something else. It doesn't really matter what you use to seal the speaker, as long as you get a good seal to the enclosure and the box is sealed really well. And the key to having a good sealed box is using good quality tools, using a table saw or a skill saw with a fence, that you can use to track. Trying to cut it by hand on a line is not going to give you a very good clean line. And next best thing, is after you get the box built, is seal all those seams with the seam sealer, something like liquid nails. And we can tell stories about liquid nails. Just be careful with liquid nails, because it has flammable vapors. So if you get any spark in the enclosure, if you don't let it properly cure and air out, you can get an explosion, and that's a whole story in itself that maybe we'll tell sometime, one of my favorite stories. So, all right, last question before we move on. Can we do this again and see what happens when you wire the speakers out of phase? Great question. What do you think, Ern? We got time to do that?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah, he says. So you want to do both enclosures? Why not? We got some time. This might go a little long tonight, guys. I hope you don't mind. I know I don't. All right. So let's go ahead and put the RTA back on. I'm going to go ahead and reset all the frequency limits to where we had it before. All right. So right now we're going to do it with just a sine wave. What are we at for SBL-wise? I can't see it. We're at 98 dB. All right. So if I disconnect one woofer, it should drop down to about 93 dB or so, right? What are we at for dB? 93, 94. There you go. So let's go ahead and wire this out of phase, which basically means one woofer is pushing while one is pulling. '81. So we went from 98 dB to 81 dB. So we've lost 17 dB of output, and that is huge. Look at the RTA. You notice how it dropped very dramatically on the RTA. Now, that is with a tone, let's do it with pink noise. So actually, let's put it back into phase. So we should be back about that 98 dB. There we are. Let's go to pink noise. Adjust the output accordingly. All right, so we're at 95 dB with them playing in polarity. Guess what I did? I think we just set the amp into protection. We did. Hang on just a moment. That would suck if I killed it. All right, let's do this again. Now, with pink noise, 78 dB out of polarity. Let's try not to short it out again. And 95 in polarity. So here again, about 17 dB gain. That's why it's very important to make sure your polarity is wired correctly. So we got 17 dB difference with the common chamber sealed box. Let's go ahead and do the same thing with the separate chamber box. I need my own Vanna White up here, guys. I need a helper. All right, these boxes are pretty stout. Now, for the record, I didn't use any acoustic fill in the boxes, and I didn't do any bracing, just to make sure everything was simple and easy. And all right, I'll line this one back up. Because it really doesn't matter as far as comparing to the other one right now. We've already done that. But just so it's pretty much the same. Banana jacks would be great in this instance for speeding this up, but they don't work very well with these spring terminals. All right. Let's go back to pink noise. (95, 96 dB). There you have it. Almost the exact same output and almost the exact same difference without or with the divider that we had without the divider. So basically, what we've learned here, talking about with and without the divider. So let's do the sine wave. And that would be clipping. In case you guys want to hear what clipping sounds like at 39 hertz. So there it is unclipped. That is woofers out of phase. 78 dB for the output with the sine wave. And 97 with them in phase. So, building boxes. What are my suggestions? And guys, there's no right or wrong. Take anything you want away from this. I always recommend a separate chamber for woofers, especially sealed, actually always. Now, in a sealed box, if the woofers are exactly the same and they always play, one doesn't become unhooked or you don't blow one, they're going to be pretty close to the same output. One of the difference you might notice that without the divider, if you don't have bracing in the box, you may get some cabinet resonances as the cabinet actually vibrates. So if you're going to, go ahead and build a divider for enclosures, I see a lot of people taking a lot of extra time to put windows in the dividers. That actually just adds a whole lot of work for you guys, in my opinion, and it's not going to affect the output whatsoever. It will affect it quite a bit if one woofer quits playing. So that was pretty much our fun with sealed enclosures with dual chambers or single chamber, mono chamber. So use your own judgment. Like I said, I just really wanted to do this and put everything out on the table and let you guys make your own decision. But if you guys ever ask me, email or anything else, do you recommend, separate chambers? Yes, I do every time, because the box is going to make sure each speaker has the right volume and airspace all the time. And it's going to be an added brace for the enclosure to help make it sound a little bit better. So cool. Any more questions before we move on to the next phase? And it is 8:13 right now, guys. What amplifier are you using? I'm actually using the sub output of an IQ 1005. So that is actually down here below me at my feet. I'm basically Bluetooth right into the IQi from the Kicker U app into the IQ 1005, and I'm just using the subwoofer output of that amplifier. But great question. Do sealed boxes get the sub to reach its mechanical limits? Absolutely they can. So it's all about how big the sealed enclosure is and how much power you run to it. And that's what they sometimes refer to as displacement limited power handling. Because depending on how the box is, it's going to change how much power the speaker handles, because at a really, really large sealed box, it doesn't have a lot of control. Therefore, you can mechanically bottom out and damage the speaker. So even a really small box, you can still mechanically damage the speaker if you run too much power to it. And that's just hard on the speaker all the way around. So great questions. Thanks for that 25 hertz to life. Glad to know you guys are following along and starting to get some fun with this. So Larry Keller says, Kicker, the topic is best sealed enclosure. Why is 0.71 QTC considered the best for sealed? The 0.71 basically is going to be the smoothest natural roll-off with the transfer function of the vehicle. It should give you the flattest response in the car. As you go higher in QTC, you get a little bit more of a bump before it rolls off, but it rolls off a little bit quicker. So, don't follow, what you see on paper as much as what your ears tell you and what you like the sound of. That's really the telltale sign is, hey, if it sounds good to you, roll with it. It doesn't matter what it says on paper. And if any of you guys have ever been to one of my trainings where I start talking about, reading sheet music, it's, if you think about it, all instruments can read the same sheet music, but they all sound differently. So they're the same on paper, but they sound completely different. So that's why I don't put a lot of, weight into what something looks like, on paper as to how it sounds, especially. You're talking, power handling and, cone travel, that gets a little more important. But as far as sound quality, it's all what you like, for the sound of your ears. So, more great questions. All right. Can you run 2 sealed and 2 ported subs, different chambers per pair, and get good sound from tight bass and boomy bass from the ported? I absolutely do not recommend this. When it comes to bass, pick one direction and go. What's going to happen is you're going to get, between sealed enclosures and ported enclosures, you're going to get more group delay, which means the sound from the ported enclosures is actually going to reach you after the sound from the sealed enclosures, because most of the energy is coming out of the port. It's got to travel through that enclosure. It's got to travel through the port, which slows it down. So the bass output is actually slowed down at the tuning frequency. There's going to be a little bit of a lag there, and that's not going to, transmit into an echo like you would with high frequencies, but it is going to make the bass very mushy, and you're going to lose some output. So do's and don'ts with boxes: do not mix and match sizes of woofers, even if they have their own separate chamber, sealed, because, and especially if you're going to try to play them the same frequency. I mean, if you're running a 15, from 50 and down, then you're running an 8-inch woofer from 50 up to 120, and then you're running a mid-range, that's fine. But don't take a 10 and a 15, put them both in the recommended sealed enclosures, and play them at the same frequency off the same amplifier, because they will not react the same. You are going to have some cancellation and interference. And by the same token, never mix and match impedances of woofers or brands of woofers, because they all react a little differently. All right. We still got more fun with a couple sealed enclosures here. So, all right. Last question before we move on, because I think we're going to run out of time here pretty quick. I don't want to keep you guys up too late. I think we got some adult beverages to be had afterwards ourselves, so we can always do more of this later. So Brandon, I'm not going to... Lealy? I hope I pronounced that right. If not, I'm really sorry. I'm bad at pronouncing names. Would you recommend slightly overpowering subs with sealed enclosures if running only clean unclipped signals and gains set correctly? Brandon, that's a very good question. If you guys rewind and go back to some of the other topics we've had, absolutely. I always recommend more power than a sub is recommended than running too little power. In my vehicle, I run 2 Q-Series L710s with a 1001 on each woofer, so they're getting approximately 1150 watts. So they're capable of 1150 watts going to each woofer in a very, very large sealed enclosure. But I've got a very good subsonic filter to help really block the low frequencies. But I'm always a fan of more clean power, and that's the key. It's got to be clean and unclipped, because the bigger the amplifier, when they clip, the more destructive power they have. So a small amplifier running into clipping is not going to hurt a speaker as quickly as a large amplifier that runs into clipping. So yes, as long as the signal is clean and unclipped, then you have to start worrying about the mechanical limits of the speaker. Are you pushing the speaker too far? Are you bottoming it out? Are you popping the surround? As far as stretching it to its limits. So that's when you actually use your ears and listen to it. Hey, does it sound like it's in distress? If it does, turn it down a little bit. But if it sounds good and clean and doesn't sound clipped and the speakers aren't making any, distortion of their own, for mechanical limits, hey, absolutely. Power is the king. I always try to overpower my woofers, or just about any speaker in the car. All right, we're going to move on to the next demonstration, which is how you orient speakers in a vehicle. This is another area where I've heard a lot of people, have a lot of opinions. And once again, there's no right or wrong here. We're going to let you make your own opinions. I'll probably voice mine, but once again, there is no right or wrong. So I'm going to move this big heavy box out of the way, and we're going to put the CVT downfiring 10-inch enclosure, actually the downfiring 12s. We're going to use those for this demonstration because those are right off the shelf sealed enclosures. Ooh. And there really is nothing scientific about this, other than I'm not showing you my backside right now. That is frightening. All right. Almost got handles on them. These are actually really cool enclosures. These are really new enclosures we've just introduced, and they absolutely sound killer. So once again, we're not looking at the overall frequency response. We're just looking at output and how it affects the way the speakers are. And this one's going to be fun because we're going to continuously play these. I'm not going to shut them off in between when I move it, so you can see that nothing has changed. All right. Let's go back over to the computer. And guys, I'm not worried about the RTA, the frequency response. We're just worried about output now. We've already done that with the other enclosures. So let's go ahead and start this at 39 hertz. And where are we at? We're at 94 dB. So I've got two woofers side by side, 94 dB in output. So what do you think is going to happen when I slide the speakers apart? Any guesses? Let's see what people think. Are we going to go up or down in SPL if I slide the speakers apart, or is it going to stay the same? You guys are having so much fun talking to each other. All right. Well, since no one's going to guess, no one wants to be caught up on the web, coming up with the wrong answer. So what I'm going to do now is I'm just going to slide these boxes apart. Maybe put about 1.5 feet between them. What happened to the output? It went down a dB. Any guess as to why that went down in output? I didn't touch anything up here, didn't change the output, but I lost a dB of output. The reason for that is mutual coupling. By having the speakers closer together, they work more as one solid unit. You get a little bit more output. There again, the whole reason why we did the L7s, because you get better mutual coupling. That's the other reason for putting the port on the front of ported enclosures. You get better mutual coupling with the drivers for a much smoother and actually quite a bit more output, especially with the ported enclosure. So side by side, 94 dB, about 1.5 feet between them, got about 93 dB. Let's put them at 90 degrees. Let's actually put them in a V and see how that changes the output. It's about 93 dB. Once again, it should be very similar. I mean, we don't have a lot of cancellation. You've got great mutual coupling. I mean, you may have a little bit of loss because of the gap in the center. But for the most part, not a huge difference in output. Now for the one I really like to do, because this is the one I hear all the time. People say, you cannot fire woofers at each other because they cancel. Well, do you think they do or do you think they don't? So you can't fire woofers right at each other because they're out of polarity and they cancel. Well, let's go ahead and do that right now. That's what we come up with. Once again, about the same output. Got 92 dB, which that might just be because they're farther away from the microphone now since they're spaced out. But they really don't cancel at all. Let's push them closer together and see what we get. Same output. So it does not matter which direction you face them. Now, if I had a microphone behind me, we would actually hear the same thing. Bass is non-directional, so you get the same sound pretty much all around that speaker. Go ahead and put them back at 90 degrees again. So I'm getting too far away from. That's 93. Put them side by side. 93. Spaced apart. 92. We lost that mutual coupling. Face them at each other. No change in output. All right, I'm kind of curious what you guys think of all that and what kind of comments you have. I mean, once again. Oh, you want to see them out of phase? Sure thing, guys. All right. So from 92 dB to 78. So 14 dB loss in output. Let's put them at the 90 degree again. We gained a dB in output. Once again, even though they're side by side, they're coupling together a little bit better, which is actually not what I expected. I expected to actually go down another dB. But it actually went up a dB or so. Side by side, still at 79. Still at 79. Gonna put them back in phase. Back up to 92. Fun, isn't it? Because I've always wanted to do that. And until this show came about, we never had the capabilities of doing something like that. And I don't know why I hadn't thought of it long before. One day it was like, hey, we need some ideas for the show. And it's like, why don't we do the box thing? I've always wanted to see it, and I've always wanted to do it where you could actually prove the theory, which is pretty much what I think we've done tonight. So, questions, comments from you guys? Big John, any update on the new KMXL release? Yes, they will be here by the end of the year. They are actually in production. It just is going to be up to the powers that be, Mother Nature, and to get them, over the sea and, through the port and all that. But yes, you guys will see the new KMXL marine speakers by the end of the year. And I'm getting excited for them. Those things are killer. So MDF, LDF, or plywood? I'll be honest with you. In my opinion, and I think you guys that build a lot of boxes, if the material changes the sound of the woofer, it's not a good material. So it doesn't matter what it is. As long as you build the box solid, you build it airtight, you build it to spec. If it's not a solid material, use better bracing. But as long as the woofer is not, coloring the sound of the enclosure, and the enclosure is not, reacting differently, it should not matter. Why do we use plywood versus MDF? A lot of it's for weight. MDF is very heavy, and there's some other materials out there. There's expanded PVC, which is a great material, but it's not as dense as MDF. It flexes a little bit more, but like I say, it's a great material. Just use more bracing. So in my opinion, it does not matter what material you use as long as you get a solid airtight enclosure to the right specification. So great question. And like I say, these are all my opinions too. So, take them with a grain of salt. I'm not, the all expert hi-fi. I just know what I've been around and what I've experienced. So next show, ported edition, dual port, single ports comparison, something along those lines. Absolutely, Andy, that's where I was wanting to go next. When I first thought about this, I wanted to do them all in the same show. But no, it isn't going to happen. As you can see, we're running about almost 8:30 right now. So I hope you guys had some fun. Subtle X, yes, it's coming too about the same time as the KMXLs. Yep, we should have that by the end of the year. It's going to be exciting Christmas for a lot of you guys out there. Is 150 watts enough for one sub? Absolutely. I mean, is it going to be the loudest sub out there? No. There have been a lot of cars out there I've run with even less than 100 watts, and they sounded great. Power has a lot to do with the efficiency of the sub. Once again, with a very efficient sub that's got a high sensitivity, it doesn't take a lot of power. To give you an example, I did two 8-inch woofers in a Jaguar in the rear deck, infinite baffle, with one of our Impulse 352 XI amplifiers. That amplifier is 35 watts per channel by 2 at 4 ohms. These were 8 ohm woofers. So it was literally running at 8 ohms stereo, so about 17 watts per woofer, and the car wasn't extremely loud, but you talk about tight, clean, deep, smooth bass. It was awesome. So yeah, 150 watts. I mean, you look at our power, our HS8, that's got a 150 watt amp built into it, and that thing sounds killer. So yeah, it's just all a matter of preference when it comes to power. All right, kicker, why is the grill for the Q-Class subwoofers discontinued? Because they broke the mold. Those molds are expensive, and here again, sometimes when the molds fail, you got to look at, is it more cost effective just to discontinue an item or to go ahead and spend the $60,000, $80,000 for a new tool? And most of the people with the Q-Class subs, and the Comp Qs and the Q-Class, they like to see those subwoofers so people know they spent the money on them. So they weren't an extremely good seller. I've got them in my vehicle, as a matter of fact. I like the way they look, but once again, it just didn't make sense to go ahead and build a new mold because, once again, the Q-Class L7s are actually just about done for its new production. So that might be some news for the rest of you that, yeah, the L7 Q-Class is going to be surpassed by its predecessor, hopefully in the next year or so. So that being said, no more questions. Guys, let's take a little commercial real quick before we do some housekeeping, and we're going to come back and we're going to do questions from our tech line, and we're also going to do reader fails and our picks of the week for an install. So come back and see us in just a minute.
Something about your hands on the wheel, got a sexy touch. It's enough to make me and my Chevy blush. So long, take it on, off with that highway. Turn me on, not let you drive, baby. You can take it fast as you want to. Girl, little dirty looks damn good on you. Start me up, Stones on the radio. Girl, I love it when you let go. Don't waste your way in the wrong way. Get out on some 4x4 play.
Hey guys, thanks for joining us back after the break. I don't know about you, but I was starting to get a little dry in the throat from talking that much. But I was having fun. I was actually, like I told you, been really looking forward to doing this with the enclosures. And like I say, it's all about getting the right information out there. And, if you can, prove something, is or isn't the way people think it is, it's beneficial either way. But we had a couple great events over the weekend. They were very warm events. We had Kicker in Bricktown, and we also had an SBL event showdown in Shawnee, Oklahoma. I unfortunately was planning on making both of them, but coming back from California on Friday, they decided to cancel my flight. So unfortunately, I didn't get back till about 11:30 on Saturday. So I missed the Kicker Showdown. So we'll be doing that event again next year. So guys, watch for the ads for that, because it is a great event. You get to come meet all the Kicker crew and come out, hang out, and have some fun and see a lot of cool cars. Something else we're going to be doing this year is the SEMA Showdown. That's going to be an SBL event right after the SEMA show. So SEMA ends on Friday. It'll be Saturday and Sunday, most likely in one of the large casino parking lots. I forgot which one we were at the last time because it's been 3 years since we've been there. But those are a lot of fun, and you will see some heavy hitters. I mean, some really, really big, powerful SBL vehicles. It is actually a lot of fun. So make sure you guys try to get out to SEMA for that if you can. So tech questions, that's kind of interesting. I printed it out. I forgot to go get it off the printer. So just give me a second here to pull up my email. And we used to have Jacob doing this for us, but unfortunately, or not unfortunately, Jacob's no longer in the technical service department. We hired him for the training department. So we actually have a position open for technical assistance, where you can answer questions on the Kicker line. So, Ernie, you don't need to pull up my laptop. I'm just going to read them here because we got a couple questions. Exactly. You never know what's going to pop up on my laptop, but I think I got all my notifications shut down so you guys can quit trying to get me in trouble like my wife did. All right. So, first question. I have a 2010 Honda Accord and I'm looking to add a 4-channel amp. Where should I tap in for signal? Not a bad question. And here, with the 4-channel radios out there, if it's a base model Honda, which probably is, I'm not sure, but you want to do your research, find out what audio system you have, if it has an amplifier or if it does not. If it does not have an amplifier, it's pretty easy. You can get all 4 signal outputs right off the back of the radio. Now, if there is an amplifier, you'll need to go find where the amplifier is, and you can actually tap into signal there. Now, it may even be beneficial if it has an amplifier, if it's a booster style amplifier, or depending on what type of signal it has, to grab the signal between the factory head unit and the factory amplifier. Now, if all those are not going to happen, you've got a vehicle like our 2022 Bronco, where to get to the back of the radio, you have to pull the dash off the vehicle to get to it. Nice going on that one, Ford. Nice job, engineers, trying to make it difficult for us. You can always go to each speaker. You can grab usually the door speakers in the front kick panels. You can grab the rear speakers at the rear deck, or if it's a 4-door car, they've got rear doors, you can grab them right there in the pillars. So wherever you can get the speaker outputs, and sometimes it's not a bad idea to go ahead and pull the door panel off the vehicle if you got to grab it in the kick panel or in the pillar. Pull the door panel off, pull the speaker out, look at what color the wires are going directly to the speaker. Generally, they're going to be the same color wires that are in the kick panel or in the pillars. So the only thing you need to make sure is you get your polarity correct. So as far as taking signal off the back of the radio, usually if you've got speakers wired up, 2, 2, 2, and 2, the top row is almost always going to be your positive signal. Now what you got to worry for occasionally is if they've got the front speakers on one plug, the rear speakers on another plug, or if they're oriented this way for the 4 speakers, you need to figure out which is the positive polarity. So you may want to pop the speakers, or you may want to use a dual trace oscilloscope like we talked about before to sum the signal together, see if it amplifies or it cancels when you sum the 2 speakers wires together. So great question there. So it's wherever you can get signal. There's a lot of different places and a lot of different vehicles. So here's a fun question. I read this earlier. It's like, I'm glad somebody asked this again, because this did happen to me while I was in Florida at one of the dealers. It said, I installed a CXA 800.1 amplifier and my truck stays running when I turn the key off. This just started after I installed the amplifier. Any thoughts? Well, yes, there's actually a very good reason for that. The older series of CXA amplifiers that had the model number in white on the top of the amps, if you ran speaker level into the amplifier for signal, which we recommend up to 10 volts or 25 watts, it would use something called DC offset to turn the amplifier on. What that is that's a DC voltage on the speaker leads that's independent of the volume control. So even if the radio is turned all the way down, you have that same DC voltage. That's what we suggest with all of our amplifiers to use for turn on. Now, with that older series of CXA amplifiers, it's automatically going to look for that DC offset first. The KX amplifiers actually have a switch. The switch is 12 volts, DC offset, or signal sense, which is the worst way to go. That's absolutely last resort. But with the older CXA, when they detected that DC offset to turn on, they took the remote input, they turned it into a remote output. Why would we do that? Why would we turn the remote input to remote output? That's so you can use that amplifier's DC offset to turn on another amplifier or another, like a processor or something that did not have DC offset or DC offset capability. So that's why we did that. The problem is a lot of people didn't know that. They figured they'd still need to run a turn-on lead for the amplifier. So we'd take that turn-on lead that would connect it to the turn-on remote in on the amplifier, and they would run it up to the front of the vehicle and they'd stab it into the ignition of the fuse block. Well, which is great. With non-DC offset, that would turn the amplifier on and off with a key. But with the CXA amplifiers and any amplifier that we had using DC offset up until the new CXA amplifiers, that's going to send 12 volts to the ignition portion of that fuse block. It's going to power that fuse block through the amplifier up to 1 amp. So that's what can happen. So make sure that if you're using speaker level input, you do not take that RC or that remote input and run that up to any place in the fuse box. The new CXA amplifiers that have the black model number, that's silkscreen gloss black, those pass DC offset through the RCA. They do not switch that remote input. So great question. Just disconnect that turn-on wire that's going up to the fuse block, and I think you're going to be just fine. So another fun question. This is something I actually wrote a tech paper about. I installed 6 KMXL 654Ls in a boat along with a KMLC. Now that's our marine LED speakers, and the KMLC is our marine LED controller. Now my speakers make a buzzing sound. Any idea what would cause that? I have a great idea what would cause that, and that is actually going to be injected noise from the LED controller. Now, it's not just our controller. Anytime you have LEDs and speakers, the way they change the colors and the brightness is with something called pulse width modulation. They actually turn DC voltage on and off and vary the amount of time it's on or off, and that's how they vary the voltage of the LEDs, and that can actually vary the colors. The problem with that is that sends out just this huge broadcast of noise. So if you're running an RCA level signal and you don't have really good RCAs and you've got the RCAs running right along with the speaker wires and the LED wires, that noise gets transmitted right into that RCA cable and causes noise. So how do you fix this? Well, there's a couple ways. First one is run speaker level from your marine head unit directly into the RCA input of our amplifiers, assuming it's our amplifiers. If not, what you have to do is you have to make sure the LED wires and the RCA wires are run completely opposite of each other. And in fact, sometimes that's not even enough. But it's going to take a lot of adjustment with the gain control on the amplifier. You're going to want to start with the gain control on the amplifier almost all the way off. And once again, that's just proper gain setting, but turn your radio up 3/4 volume and start turning the gain up so you get the proper output, and you have to balance that with the LEDs. Now, if you're running a single color of LED, like red, green, blue, or if you actually use a combination like the red and blue to make purple, if you wire those up with DC voltage, there is no pulse width modulation. You will have no noise. So you can have LEDs on boats as long as they're a solid color without noise. But once again, you cannot change the color once you wire it up, directly like that. And that's just a factor of electronics. So great questions. So thank you for those 3 questions, guys. And don't forget, if you guys have questions, support@kicker.com. The guys are just really awesome at answering questions. So feel free to reach out to our staff here. Use us for all of our abilities. And once again, we'll look forward to hearing from all you guys. And let us know if you like stuff too. I mean, let us know good things, not just, hey, I had a problem with this. Like, hey, I tried this and it really worked. We like all the tips and all the input you guys can give us. So, and we're going to go to the other fun thing, which we're going to go right into cool rides and fails. So, Ernie, why don't you go ahead and pull up my laptop? Let's start with the fails tonight. So, what do you guys see wrong with this picture, besides everything? Yeah, Ernie's back there going, well, what's right about it? And not much of anything. So it looks like they've used a C-clamp to ground the wires to the hood or trunk of a vehicle. I'm not sure if that's the hood or the trunk. It could be either. And it actually looks like the hood, because that little white tag looks like a main foot. But hey, it looks like they did try to scratch the paint away with a nail. So not really good ground. And once again, you're now relying on the hinges to provide ground between the joints on the hinges. Definitely not a good thing to do. We've talked multiple times about make sure you have a good ground, make sure you bolt through metal, make sure that the paint's all cleared off, and make sure you've got a good ground path, which may mean doing the big 3 upgrade. So yep, that's definitely a fail in my book. This one, if you guys have any thoughts, I mean, I don't know really what the heck's going on in this picture. So that ground wire, well, let's look at all the problems. We got a whole list of problems. First of all, the ground wire is thicker than the power wire, which you want to have both, power and ground wire the same gauge. Doesn't matter how long the run is, make sure they're the same gauge. I'm really not sure if that's a plastic washer on top of the, under the screw between the wire, but the switch. So I guess that's the remote turn on for the amplifier. They didn't have a switch anywhere. Yeah, it's not very remote. It's actually very centrally located right on the amplifier, but I'm not even sure how they have it connected. Then we look at the 12-volt input, which once again looks like it's about, 12-gauge wire. But why is there a little wire running from the 12-volt to the one side of the fuse? And I can't absolutely guarantee it's connected to the fuse or if it's running under the amplifier to something else. But generally, this is going to have to be a fail. I don't see that as working at all. Another grounding issue. Yeah, that's kind of the biggest thing with car audio installs. Grounding issues are pretty much the area where people seem to miss it. I'm going to blow this one up here. So yes, we do have, looks like 8-gauge power and ground wire. They're the right colors, got good speaker wires. But if you notice what it's grounded to, as I zoom back out, this is the back of a seat frame. So once again, just like grounding it to the hood or the trunk of a vehicle, you're relying on that hinge right here. If it gets rusted or corroded, it's not going to make very good ground. And then they're using, looks like a self-tapping tech screw. So that's got to be pretty much sheet metal if they use that screw. So nope, not a good install there either. And the last one, I can't tell you how many times I've seen stuff like this in the real world, guys. Look here again. Let's go through the list of everything that's wrong. First of all, different gauges of wire here, and different gauges of wire here. Black wire going to orange wire going to smaller red wire. Looks like just electrical tape rolled up, and you can see bare copper right here. And I would guess you can see bare copper right there. And notice how this is just hanging here, not very good and secured. But let's look at the obvious fact that the wire is running through the door jamb, and this wire is actually fairly pinched pretty good, and you can see this is all deformed. I have had to, unfortunately, in Iasca, and USAC competitions disqualify people, discontinue them. Yep, you're discontinued from life. Disqualify people for running their power wire through the door jambs. This is an absolute no-no. And they said, well, I put a fuse on there. Well, that doesn't make it right. So the other thing the same event that I disqualified 3 people for at one event for doing this, one right after the other, was a guy that, thought he was following the rules. His fuse was within 18 inches of the battery. It was actually about 5 inches away from the battery, but the wire was coiled around the battery 4 times. So literally, it was about 6 feet of wire and then the fuse. So not very safe to do that. I don't know if you plan on use that for a heating element for the battery if you lived up in, North Dakota or something like that, but don't do that stuff, guys. Just use common sense. Looking at this, it's just bad all the way around. Yeah, like Tim said, at least they use split loom. Look at the split loom they use on this little tiny wire. But hey, they used it. So, hey, I guess you'll give them one kind of quarter bonus point for that. So, next thing I want to do, and almost the last thing before the giveaways, I want to basically do my choice of the week. And normally I pick 2 or 3 different vehicles or sometimes 4. This is going to be 1. So, once again, if you guys are sending pictures, send multiple pictures. Send us pictures of the outside of the vehicle, the inside, the install, different areas. And that's what I really liked about this one. And I pulled it right off of our Instagram page today. This is a Jeep, and I don't even know where this event was. I don't know if Jeremy or Tim happened to be at this event or if it was one of our dealer events. But this is one slammed Jeep. Look at just crazy. Is it slammed? It pretty much is sitting right on the ground. Nice stainless steel exhaust work. It is a Wrangler-ish 5.9 liter, and it's called the Jeep Rod, by the way. That's what they actually called this, and I like the way they got the brake booster. So the fact the brake booster is on that side, I don't even think this is in the U.S. I think it's a right-hand drive, but hey, I wasn't there. I don't know. But this is the back of the vehicle. Got the KMXL or KMF speakers on the back. That's the flat mount tower speakers. I can't tell if they're 9 or the 11 inch. I'm going to assume they're the 11 inch. They look pretty big. Got the purple LEDs going. I would assume that those are going to be the stop lights and turn signals. And if you notice the 2L7S speakers, this is an all steel enclosure. And nobody asked about doing steel enclosures. I've done aluminum enclosures before, like 1/4 inch aluminum, and then absolutely sprayed the snot out of them with Line-X to make sure that they were really solid and dead. So once again, doesn't matter what you use for an enclosure as long as it doesn't ring or cause noise of its own. So awesome view from the back of this vehicle. And let's keep going here with the next picture. This is the inside of the vehicle. Another set of the KMFs fired right at the back of your head. You got the 2 marine amplifiers. Look like they're on shelves. You see the transmission tunnel down here. A lot of really nice metal work. All these seams have been welded and ground smooth. I'm not sure what this is through the center, if that's, a port for the subs or vents, let air flow through the vehicle, but really cool vehicle. I want to see this in person. There's another view of it, and if you notice, there's actually the KMX amplifiers mounted on the ceiling too. So I see 4 amps here. He's got fusing mounted right on the back wall. Once again, just a really cool install. And from the looks of it, there's another set of the KMFs firing right at the driver. I think the seats are out of the vehicle, so here you would have I guess this is the passenger seat. The driver's on the other side because there's no steering wheel here. We got your front stage, you got your back stage, you got 2 amplifiers here, another 2 up here. That is one crazy ride. I really want to see that one in person. I bet you it's loud. There's no carpet, nothing in there to stop the echoes. But hey, it's fun, it's exciting, and you get to do a lot of cool things. So I guess you guys want to win something. So I never get to win anything. Tim, do you ever win anything on this show? Besides a hard time and extra work when I got you moving the camera all around. So tonight's winners. Let's start off with the third place winner. Third place or third. So third place winner is going to be, as Bill gets ready to throw it up on the screen. Winner 3 is Bobby B from California. Well, there could be a lot of Bobby B's in California, but they'll know it's the right one. So Bobby, if that is you out there and you're watching the show, watch for an email from Bill Frog. He's going to ask you for your name, your address, your T-shirt size. He's going to ask you for a phone number. So once again, watch for that email from Bill. He's going to send you out your third prizes, and that's going to be the koozie, the T-shirt, and the EB400 earbuds. So the runner-up to the grand prize, or second place today, is going to be Rodolfo L. from Texas. So Rodolfo L. from Texas, you have won the second place prize package, and that's going to be the Tabor Bluetooth headphones over the ear, the Gray Kicker T-shirt, and the Kicker koozie. Which brings us down to the last and final, the grand prize winner for the evening. Guys, don't forget to register for the Bobby Gately prize, too, if you just tuned in. Watch for that. That's a really good contest going on, really, really gorgeous enclosure. And thanks to Bobby for doing that for us. So the grand prize winner is Bill, nudge, nudge, wink, wink. Looks like Michael D. from Georgia. So Michael D., watch for that email from Bill. He's going to ask for your name, your address, your shirt size, and, of course, your phone number. So thank you guys again. Thank you everybody for tuning in. Make sure you hang on and watch Living Loud with Andy. Andy's doing a great job. We can't tell him enough thanks for all the support he gives us. And like I say, it's every other Tuesday. And like I say, kicking it with Andy when we're not on the air. We're going to go to an alternating show schedule. But we will be back again in 2 weeks, and I will be there with you. We've got another exciting guest or two to have on the show, and we're going to be talking about some really, really cool high-dollar cars. So make sure you tune in for that in 2 weeks. And I want to thank, the crew here, Tim and Jeremy and Ernie and Bill and everybody else that helps put on the show. Sandy in the background, she's always helping out. So we got a great crew here. We've had a lot of fun. Hopefully you guys have learned a little bit. If you didn't learn, thought it was interesting, make sure you give us suggestions for other shows, other topics, other guests to have. But that being said, I don't think I got much else for you other than you guys have a happy, safe, enjoyable Tuesday evening. Hopefully it's a little cool there. We've been in like the 105s to 110s here in Oklahoma for the last 2 weeks, and it's going to continue like as far as we can see into the future, so it's going to be hot. So guys, thank you for tuning in. Yep, this is my warning to Ernie that I'm going to close the show, and we're going to go right into the normal news feed. So thanks again for tuning in, everybody. Have a great night. Be safe, and we'll see you soon.